Hey, and welcome to another episode of Coffee HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. Um, Apologies for the gravelly voice and weird location and the shaky cam. I recently got back from Dijon where I caught COVID, once again ill. So I'm hiding in my spare bedroom so I don't infect my wife. Today, I want to talk about translating terms. And I have been on a bit of a mini quest with the Bolognese sauces, particularly Dall'Agochie, that I think have in general terms, I think the way that the community has chosen to translate the Bolognese systems is hideously wrong, to put it bluntly. There is a standard pattern of not translating certain technical terms that I think makes the sources practically impenetrable to most people in a way that isn't true if you read it in Italian. And honestly, people have made translation choices that are frankly stupid. I don't know if we talk in such uncertain terms, but I do strongly mean that, strongly feel that right now, particularly for the Bolognese sources. I'm going to read a passage from Dall'Agochie. This is Jarek Swanger's translation. I got that right. Doesn't put his name on it. Yep, Jarek Swanger's translation. You can get it on Lulu. Okay, right. For the most part, it's a pretty clear translation. Now I'm going to read a passage for you, including the footnotes that Jarek himself has put into it. This is about the cuts. The mandritto, footnote, right hand, is named so because it originates from your right side. And it is called fendente, footnote, cleaving, because it cleaves from the head to the feet in a straight line. But one calls a mandritto squalimbro, footnote, diagonal, although archaic, when it passes diagonally. That is, from the adversary's left shoulder to his right knee. The tondo, footnote, round, or traverso, footnote, across, is the name of the one that turns across. It says crosswise, but across. Raddoppio starts from beneath, yada, yada, yada. These ones are less true. My point is this. These are very, very, very literal terms in the Italian, right? You know, fine squalimbo is archaic. You don't see it in modern Italian, but it doesn't fucking mean anything in a non-literal sense. There's no kind of flowery sense to it. And by not translating these terms, the text becomes super opaque. Later on, you know, he's talking about strikes and all these kinds of things. And he goes through the process of saying, "I'll do a squalimbo, do a tondo, or whatever it happens to be, or do a reverso." And first of all, if you are kind of reading it, it becomes quite difficult. You've got to constantly in your mind be going, "Okay, squalimbo, which one was that again? That was diagonal, right?" Whereas if you just says diagonal, it's like, okay, I speak English, right? Diagonal. So from a reading perspective, it makes it so much harder to engage with. Where it's particularly egregious, though, is, and I've just come back from Dijon, so this is kind of forefront of my mind. If you're doing a workshop at an event, particularly if you're doing any kind of workshop where, you know, people don't necessarily train that weapon, because a lot of the time when we see at workshops, we see introduction to a new weapon and people come along. When you start spouting all these things like squalimbo, etc., you know, in it means fucking nothing to half of your attendees. Right, whereas you're teaching in presumably a language, English in my case, could be something else, right? And if you're teaching in that language and you say, do a diagonal strike, even if they've never touched a side saw before, they will pretty much know what you mean. I don't think that the numbering system that some systems use for cuts is better, right, by the way, but it's particularly annoying when you have systems that have numbered cuts, and instead of saying first, second, third, fourth, we say prime, second, terce, right? You're just using the cardinal numbers in a different language. Makes no fucking sense to do it, right? They are perfectly literal translations to English. And frankly, leaving the terms untranslated like that it's just a dick move. It adds nothing. I keep hearing people saying, "Oh, it preserves the original context." It doesn't. Right. First of all, for a lot of these, they're very literal. You know, Dall'Agochie again, he has Galia di testa. preserve the original translation and the original context of the head guard. Why is it called the head guard? Because it's the one that guards the head. And frankly, right, there's no context preserved for these literal things. Even if there's some weird, obscure, arcane context that you're trying to not convey or convey in English, most of your readers don't speak the original language. They don't get that context. So if there is some really super special meaning that you need to get across, that's what a footnote is for. You can do it in the footnote and kind of move on. But preserving the original language adds nothing. I've also heard people say that, oh, well, you do it so there's this kind of universal language. Also bollocks, right? First of all, so their idea there is that, okay, if we use the original terms, then it doesn't matter which translation you picked up. You know, we're speaking English, you could be French, right? At least you know exactly what I'm talking about, you know, because we've used the original terms. Well, first of all, the period sources do not use these terms consistently in a lot of cases, so it doesn't help, you know, guard and tester, head guard, right? You know, again, Dall'Agochie has it one way. It's different in every other system that has the head guard with the same name. So actually, regardless of what term we use, we haven't got a universal language because you might have looked at it from a different book. But, you know, also, if you're speaking in English, especially with these very, very plain descriptions, diagonal is a far more universal term than scroll and row, right? Especially because not everybody, again, will study the source that you're referring to when you're talking about it. So, fundamentally, people should stop this bullshit of not translating terms. Honestly, I don't know why people do it. It's not standard practice in most things. I think it's because people have done it in Eastern martial arts, and so people have coupled it in Western martial arts. It adds nothing. Stop doing it. Just translate to plain English and make it so people can actually understand what you're saying. I might have come across slightly grumpier because I'm ill and thus grumpier, but fundamentally, I still believe it, even if maybe I'm slightly angry about it right now. And as I say, I find this is particularly a problem for the Bolognese sources that are actually quite straightforward and simple sources, made completely opaque because all of the important words are left untranslated, and you're essentially requiring people to first learn a vocabulary before they can engage with the fencing content, which is the bit they're actually caring about. Whereas you could have just taught them the fencing content by using words literally like they were used in the original sources. And the last one I'll say for this one, I like Viggiani. I don't have a copy right in front of me. But Viggiani, he's not talking about translations, but he's talking about using weird names for guards, like guard of the Alicorn, guard of the Unicorn, or Iron Door. And Viggiani says, stop with all this bullshit nonsense. I'm not trying to fool you into giving me money. Just call them what they are, right? Use some terms that make sense. And he doesn't like the Bolognese guard systems for that reason. He's a Bolognese source himself, with many other overlaps to them. Speak plain English. Speak plain language, or whatever language you're communicating in, and it'll make it much easier for people to learn defense, which is the thing that we actually care about. Thanks for listening to my grumpy rant on this morning.